Hi, and welcome to Finextra at Cybos TV. And today I'm talking to Amit Dua and Penkesh Kulkarni from Infosys. And we're going to be talking about two of my favorite subjects, which is social media and mobile, which are, nice, fun topics for Cybos. This year, the Cybos team said that it was the year that the social media was really going to be presented full force at the event. And the banking industry is often seen as a conservative industry. So where does social media fit in the financial services world?
I think, and rightly so, you said it's a topic of great interest. And from our point of view, our opinion is that social media is moving exactly like the email did at the workplace environment, from a nice to have kind of thing to how did I live without it all these years. Because statistics say that, so just take for example Facebook, it has more than 500 million active users at any given point in time. You'll be amazed to learn that just as it took a radio, for example, 38 years to cross the 50 million user mark. 38 years. Even the ubiquitous internet took 4 years to cross that mark. It has taken only 8 months for the Facebook to cross the 50 million mark. Because today, every generation across all of us, we are spending more than a minute out of 8 minutes that we spend on the internet. More than a minute by each of us is spent on the Facebook. Now, what banks are finding is
Yeah, because I think that's the real question. I
Yeah.
mean, my mother's on Facebook, so we know it's a force.
Right.
But what does it mean for this
Sure,
world?
sure. So what banks are finding is either they have a choice to stay away and let the users converse and talk about the banks and their products amongst themselves, or to tap that channel, okay, and harness it to their advantage. Take for example the First Direct Bank. What they've done is they've opened up their own channel to a conversation like that, which allows them to get insights into the customer as to what does customer like about them and what does the customer not like. In fact, they're going a step ahead in actually getting insights on what are the new products that they should develop by tapping into the customer conversation. I heard the CIO of ING Direct worldwide yesterday saying one very relevant thing. He says bank customers don't necessarily need the bank. All they need is banking. Now that banking could be provided by Facebook, or that could be provided by a bank. Now, if a Facebook has a pay or has a link to a new product, customers are going to simply click on it and maybe register themselves for that product. They don't even need to go to the bank. Now, a bank who's decided to stay away from that channel, okay, vis-a-vis advertising or putting their product characteristics on Facebook, is going to be a winner. So in short, essentially, I think that's there to stay. Is going to grow, in fact, by leaps and bounds. And if you ask my view, banks have no choice but to harness that channel and actually use it to their own advantage.
I mean, I think talking about social media then I think naturally leads us to talking about mobile. And, at these types of conferences, I talk to a lot of the demands of corporate customers. And what I'm hearing from banks is their corporate clients who have an iPad app for their retail bank walk in and say, you know what, I want this same functionality with my corporate relationship. So, I mean, how are banks responding to the mobile challenges?
So firstly, corporate customers are also retail customers by themselves. Today there are about 2 billion mobile devices on planet Earth, going strongly to 5 billion, and people are expecting by 2020 it will hit 20 billion. That's way above the population of people on the Earth. So from that perspective, you have a channel here which is pervasive. It's gone into every strata of the society, right from the poorest of poor to the richest of the rich. Now you put that in context of the corporate world. People are used to mobile phones and smartphones. They are fairly up to date with technology. Earlier there might be complications on how do you download apps, but now there are people from the corporate world who have never done or who have never been involved in IT, who are developing their own apps. So the knowledge and the awareness on the corporate world here is far too high. Now for them it is a much more easier transition to also do banking on the internet, and all the corporate functions of a bank that might be required can be very easily done on the internet and on the mobile channel. So that is a need which has come or a demand which has come in from the corporate customers by themselves. Again, as Amit was mentioning, for the social media, same is true for mobility. You either ignore it or you jump in big time. And what we are seeing is most of our customers are planning to do something in that direction. It starts with developing applications, starts with a lot of work that's happening in the emerging market. So you are sort of banking the unbanked, so to say. And even the smaller corporates that you have in Asia Pacific, in parts of Africa, etc. It gets started with that. The thinking is initiated with that, but very quickly they realize that it has a big promise and potential in the developed world as well. And slowly the functionalities get added on and built in for the developed world. And you can almost imagine a sort of a B2B kind of a network that's getting formed and being built, at very strong pace. And we think that it will continue to grow in this fashion.
I mean, it seems even in the B2B world, outside of banking the unbanked, the real push for mobile is coming from Eastern Europe, from Asia, from Latin America, sort of the so-called emerging markets, developing countries. So instead of Western Europe and America, you see it as well?
Yes. Yes. So what we are seeing is actually the emerging markets have jumped a generation. So if you talk about generation Y or generation Z, that's both in the Western world and emerging markets. The generation Z in the emerging markets may not have access to the technology that their counterparts in the earlier generation did not have access. What is happening now is the generation Z of today has actually just jumped technologies and are very comfortable with using mobile as a channel, as opposed to having access to even a laptop. There are people in emerging economies who may not be so conversant with a laptop but are very, very conversant with their smartphone. So given the volume that is available, India, for example, is already 1.2 billion in terms of population. China is, again over 1 billion. So there's a huge amount of population there who has access to technology, who is very conversant with the technology. So the uptake, I think, will happen more on the emerging markets, as you rightly mentioned. And to some extent, it's sort of turning it on its head, and we think that, to some extent, you might have the developed world as being a laggard here and following what is happening in the emerging markets.
Great, very interesting. Thank you very much, both.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Liz.
Liz.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.